Hello and welcome to Little World Warriors episode 3. My name is Tom, aka Taco, and it's been a while since I put one of these podcasts out. We moved up from Liverpool to the Lake District 6 months ago, so it's been a busy time for us. And I've had the privilege of connecting to Kate Reed recently, a birth doula and mother of 3 teenage boys living in Kendall. And we met the other day to have a chat about Kate's home ed journey. We met in a cafe in Penrith, and apologies in advance for the background sound, but it adds a certain ambience, I think. I hope you enjoy our conversation, and please like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube, and share with anyone you think might be interested in hearing this conversation. Thank you and enjoy. Hello, Kate.
Hello, Tom.
Welcome to the Little World Warriors podcast. And just to let anyone who's listening know, we're sat in a cafe in Penrith, so there might be a bit of background noise and teapots clinking and clanking, but hopefully you can hear us okay. So Kate has kindly said she will share with me her home ed journey, and was it something that you always thought you would do?
It's something I always thought I would do from my early 20s, because I worked as a nanny for a woman called Wendy in my early 20s, and she was and has been a massive influence in my life. She had 2 daughters, and they were a mixture of home educated, Steiner school and mainstream schools in Africa and in England. So they had a real different experience of all the different types of education, but because I was involved looking after them whilst they were being home educated and at the Steiner school, that I really saw something. I'd come from a very, what you might call sort of mainstream, normal middle class upbringing, and I'd only ever been to state schools and a private school. So for me, I didn't even know it was a thing. I didn't even know there was this thing that you could home educate. So having an experience of that in my early 20s and seeing what that looked like, or what that version of it looked like, because obviously everybody does it differently. From that moment on, I thought, if I ever have children, I'm going to home educate. And so then when I did have children, we decided to home educate, and luckily my husband was on board. He'd had a bad time at school, he was one of those kids that left at 15 without any qualifications, and had thrown a couple of chairs at teachers, and generally had bad relationships with the teachers because they'd been pretty awful to him, and so he wasn't massively pro school. So we embarked on our home ed journey. I have to say though, at one point later on, when my eldest is called Jacob, and when he was about 9, he said he wanted to do more learning how to read and write. So then we did go to the local primary school for a year, and we flexi-schooled, and they were amazing because there were only 20 kids in the whole school, so they were very pleased that another 3 kids were about to show up. So they bent over backwards for us, which I'm deeply grateful for. And one of my children, well actually all of them, but mostly there was one in particular that would have really struggled at school, so I asked if I could go in as an unpaid sort of learning support person in the classroom. So I went every day to school with them for a year, just for the mornings. And I am really grateful for that for 2 reasons. One is that it gave them an experience of school, so they had that, and that's useful, I think, for some kids. And also they had a contrast to what was their normal home ed life to what school life is like, so they could understand it a bit better with their peers, because they obviously have friends that go to school. And also, it did help them academically. It took some of that responsibility off me, which I was struggling with at that point, because I had 3 boys, Jacob, who was 9, and the twins, who were 6, and 3 lads. I mean, trying to make 3 lads sit still at a table, all at very different levels, trying to learn, and me trying to get the resources together to do that was pretty tough. So, yes, it was good timing. But I'm also really glad that 2 of them definitely wanted to stop, and I was fine with that. One of them did want to carry on, Zeb, one of the twins. He stayed on for another term on his own without me being there in the mornings and enjoyed it. But after a whole term of doing that, he decided he wanted to be home educated again. So he came back out. So yeah, that was our sort of journey so far in a nutshell.
Yeah. And how old are your boys now?
So Jacob's 17 and the twins are 14.
Okay, right. And how is that kind of age homeschooling? Are they doing GCSEs and things, or?
Yes, so I made a decision quite early on that I was never going to try and make home like school. There are some people that I know who can home educate that way, either because they've been teachers themselves before they had their own children, or because they're just really organised and have that ability to, maybe they were quite academic themselves. I did okay academically at school. I was never a high flyer, but I made a decision quite early on, I'm not going to try and make home. I even used to call it homeschooling, and then I realised I needed to call it home education because I wasn't trying to make home like school. So we never were massively following curriculums. We had some maths tutors over the years, like once a week for each of them, and then we'd have English tutor sort of, where we should do lots of other stuff with them too, like art stuff, but just to keep some basics in place. But anyway, when Jakey got to 16, he suddenly said, I want to do a couple of GCSEs, I want to do my maths and my English, because he knew that for a lot of colleges and apprenticeship schemes those were useful to have, and also because he had school friends who were doing GCSEs, so he wanted to see what it was all about. So he worked really hard for about 3 months, and we managed to get him in an exam. Our friend works at a posh school in Sedbergh, and we managed to get him in for the Christmas exams GCSE, and he managed to pass his maths GCSE, and then he went to the local college and did his English language, an evening class for adults, but they took him because he was over 16. Right. So yeah, he's got his maths and English GCSEs, and now he's working as a commis chef, trainee commis chef, and obviously they weren't bothered if he had GCSEs or not. It's nice to put them on his CV, but that's what he's doing at the moment, and so far no need or desire to do any more GCSEs or A-levels, but maybe that'll come. And it doesn't. We've always taught them that they're there if they want to do them, but it's not the only route to living a happy and successful life. There are other ways. Now my other Zeb, one of my twins, Zeb, is, I hate labels, but he would be what would be more classic. He was the one that chose to stay at school a bit longer. He quite likes academic study. So he wants to go to, we've got an agricultural college near us, and from 14 they can go there for 1 or 2 days a week doing a vocational course like agriculture or animal studies or photography, and then they can also do maths, English, biology and chemistry GCSEs, and he's keen. So he's saying, Mum, have you applied? Mum, make sure I don't get on that course, they get full up, don't you dare not do it in time. He really wants to go this September to do those 4 studies, and that's great because I'm not having to force him. He's leading it. He's telling me what he wants. So he'll go and do those GCSEs, and he'll probably do them within a year. So that means he'll have 4 GCSEs by the time he's 15. Again, I don't really care about this stuff, but just in case people are listening, it's just good to speak about this stuff, that they can catch up and they can do this stuff even if they haven't had years and years and years of that formal education. His twin brother is a completely different kettle of fish. He was the one that even when I was going to school with him, I had to peel his fingers off the railings sometimes and carry him in. He hated it. He hated the sitting still. He used to always have to have some Play-Doh or plasticine in his hands to fiddle with. He could not stand that sitting still on the carpet with his legs crossed while the teachers went on and on about speech marks and where to put the full stop. He didn't even understand what she was talking about, and not because he's not clever. He's a very clever lad. He's just one of those kids that does a lot better when he's being physical. Like the teacher said when they had a circus day, she was like, I can't even recognise your son. He's so engaged and he's enjoying it. I'm like, yeah, it's because they're outside and they're doing something physical and fun and interesting, where he's using his body. He's not having to sit still. So he now still has like a maths lesson once a week and an English lesson sometimes. But he's working on the local farm. He went to help with lambing last year, and since then it's just, within a week I hardly recognised him. He was working on the farm, and the farmer was absolutely delighted that he'd found somebody and who listened, was clever, understood what to do, did what he was told, and so he's been doing that ever since. Not full time, but he's been having a great time pulling lambs out and and injecting things and trimming feet and So that's the way he's going, which suits his personality a lot more than being in a classroom. Well, like I say, whereas his twin brother actually quite likes sitting still and learning. So I think in a nutshell, sort of the essence of homemade, that's the beauty of it, is that you can, to a degree, allow and support the individual.
Yeah, and I think when it's coming from them, when it's that kind of intrinsic motivation, when it's something that they're choosing to do, wanting to do, then they're gonna do it better and enjoy it. So yeah, it's amazing. I think it's about giving them more choice, isn't it? And I think catering for all the different types of learning and information processing and schools, mainstream schools can't cater for multiple. They'll do their best to, but if they've got a class of 20 kids, they've just got to get their lesson plan, tick all the boxes and I started a primary PGC and I really like the idea of being a primary school teacher, but just the I know I couldn't do it. I wanted to be able to do it, but I know I wouldn't have been able to kind of conform, and I think I thought that primary was going to be a lot more free and creative, and that you'd have a lot more free reign, but it was so restrictive, and it was around the time that Michael Gove was making a lot of changes, and there was just so much negativity within the schools where I did my placements, and it was so sad to see, and just the number of young teachers burning out, and it's a tricky one really, because I know it's if parents are working full time, then homeschooling is maybe not an option.
Yes, I've often thought over the years it's a privilege in some ways to be able to home educate. Yeah, because there has to be either one of you at home most of the time, or a combination of you taking it in turns with your work, or a way to somebody still have to bring some money in, don't you? So we were very lucky that my husband enough that I did work a bit and my first was born, but as soon as the twins arrived I was like, oh, no chance, there's no way I could do anything other than just get through these next few years while they're young. But saying that, I also got friends who financially were in a very different position to us and still managed it is a privilege to home educate in some ways, but some people choose to sacrifice a lot in order to do it, and good on them.
Yeah, I suppose on that subject of sacrifice, do you feel like you did have to sacrifice a lot? Did you?
Well, I would try to reframe it. So,
being a parent, there's always an element of that.
Exactly. And it was. I do feel like I was really lucky in lots of ways. I'm a very social person, and home ed really fulfilled something for me too, because what we did, I thought we all, or me and the other parents around, that we home educate our children together, learned very quickly the best way to get our kids to do anything was if their mates were doing it. Everybody knows that, don't they? Your kids will do anything if their mates are doing it, kind of thing. So for example, I'd think, let's have a water wheel making workshop. And my kids would be like, I don't know, Mum, I don't know if I really want to do that. And then I'd say, yes, Sonny, Fergal, Lily, blah, 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 are all coming. And they're like, no, we'll do it. So we just, so it fulfilled that in me, that we'd end up with these great activities and days out and going to each other's houses and doing things together. So in some way, it didn't feel like a massive sacrifice to me on that level. I definitely sacrificed my financial, I definitely sacrificed that to a degree. I sacrificed my career in inverted commas, but I was lucky again because I didn't have loved what I did. I was a masseur and a homeopath and a living statue, but it wasn't that thing that drove me, I loved what I did, but I could also choose to let it go or let it go dormant for a while. So I suppose I made sacrifices in that way, and I'm sure I made sacrifices in terms of my feeling of self at times, because I was so driven in a way to allow them this opportunity in this space that I would have to, a lot of the time, or some of the time, override perhaps my physical needs of sleep. But again, all parents would say that, wouldn't they? For example, we'd have a day and then it would get towards bedtime, and most of the day my boys would spend fighting if we weren't, out doing stuff. And I'd get to bedtime and suddenly they'd all get on like a house on fire and start creating these amazing games where they would be dressing up in my clothes and building dens on the bed and jumping around and brushing their teeth on skateboards, and suddenly this whole world would open up where they were just incredibly creative and imaginative and like I say, all getting on really well. And I just would think, oh my God, I can't stop this. Bedtime was 2 hours ago, but I ain't stopping this. This is so important. So there was a sacrifice there on that level that I had to just allow. The whole reason, one of the main reasons I'm educated was I wanted my children to imbibe, to have an inner feeling of freedom. And I knew that if I thwarted that or limited it just because I was a bit knackered or a bit grumpy because I wanted to go to bed, then I wasn't doing what I was setting out to do. So there was a sacrifice, but it was worth it.
I think so. And I think as if you're going to be a parent, I suppose a lot of parents are more than happy to kind of hand that responsibility over to schools and to teachers, and because that's what they had, and everyone around them is doing, and they would never think to do otherwise. But I think, I suppose a lot of parents wouldn't ever consider doing anything different.
And it does work for some people, doesn't it?
And it does work, And I think you do, for some children as well. I think they thrive in that environment, and so my son Kai, he's almost 5, so he's halfway through reception year, which is kind of not quite school. There's sort of, but he's having to wear a uniform and kind of the early days he was just questioning why he had to wear a uniform and why he had to go to school, and he said something last week, I think, on the drive to school. He was just a bit upset about having to go to school, and he said something along the lines of I just want to be myself, I don't want to be told what to do, and it's and in my heart I'm like, I completely resonate with what he's saying. This 4-year-old boy, I'm like, I get what you're saying, but then it's a tricky one, really, because I think when he's there, he probably does enjoy it, and it'd be useful in some ways to have a bit of a fly on the wall to see how he's doing, throughout the day, and I mean he's very sort of social and enjoys the interaction, but how much space there is for that during in classroom time. They probably are having to just sit down and do as they're told, and so it's sort of gauging. I guess if there was a sort of identification chart for parents, is your child A, B, C, D, E, and there's different channels then to but at the moment there's just it seems like there's just the one option, and then home education.
Yes, I know. There's so much more potential, isn't there? Really, there's so much more potential in schools. And I don't mean that in the sense that people who work in schools aren't already doing an amazing job, because so many of them are. They just are. I mean, teachers are working their backsides off to still be able to teach and love and hold these children, even though they've got crazy amounts of stuff from up top down and protocols and some of them still manage to do an incredible job, a lot of them I'm sure, but yes, there does and again I think there's a massive potential between, there's huge gaps in home education, there's huge experiences my children haven't been exposed to because they're not at school on all levels, you know, obviously people will say they're not socialising. Like, you know, socialisation would be a lot of people's concerns about home education. Well, that's definitely, as far as I'm concerned, not true. I feel personally socialisation is probably as good or even better than school in lots of ways, because my children have always hung out with lots of other adults and lots of other children of all ages, not just loads of kids the same age. So they've had older kids to look up to, they've had younger kids to take care of, they've had other adults that they feel really comfortable with, that I wouldn't go as far as to say they've been like their second parents, but they've grown up with these other parents for years, and we all take care of each other's children. It's a bit tribal, if you like. And it's lots of people have noticed how confident and comfortable my children are with grown-ups, and how mature they can be while still being fun and daft and being kids, but because they don't have any kind of negative relationship with adults. Now, most teachers are brilliant, but obviously some teachers aren't that great, and you can learn at school, I think, that you have to either please the adults to make your life okay, or you're going to get misunderstood or told off by the adults. But my children just don't have that. So they have this respect and like being with adults, you know, not as maybe as much as they like being with their friends, but not so far off, you know. And I'm really grateful for that, and I am really grateful when I see them with younger children that because they were lucky enough when they were younger to have older homemade kids who would play with them and take care of them and teach them stuff. Mine now take that and do it to the younger kids when they're with them, when, you know, to a degree. So that side of it. So the socialisation is good, I think, if you've got a good homemade community around you, which we're very lucky in this county we have.
I think the community is key. From the conversations I've had so far, and where we were in Liverpool before we moved up to Cumbria, we were in Liverpool, and there was quite a thriving home education network there. And then obviously moving to a new place, and you don't know people, and you know, a few Facebook groups and things. But I think I suppose everyone's a bit more spread out up here as well. So you're
geographically, it's a bit more challenging up here.
You're kind of very reliant on driving, which you know is fine, and I think. It's just about making those connections, which we're still in the process of doing. But just hearing you speak then kind of made me think about my own experiences of school and how I was your, I don't know, kind of typical, like the good boy program was quite strong in me. This kind of, associating that praise with. Being loved or whatever. So I would put quite a lot of pressure on myself to do well at school from a very early age, you know. And I remember I was kind of getting prizes and things like age 5, 6 for being, you know, top of my class, and then I was like head boy in my primary school, and then that, you know. So end of secondary school, I'd sort of began to question the system quite a lot, but was still very kind of institutionalised, and I sort of played that game well. You know, I came out of school, you know, all the grades and everything, but when I came out of that bubble, that's when things started to unravel for me, because I'd just spent, you know, however many years just like playing that game. And you know, my teachers were sort of all kind of encouraging me to do well and go to university without any real. I felt like there wasn't much grounding, basically, in like who I was and what I wanted to do. Like I always wanted to make films. That was kind of what I wanted to do. But that wasn't something I was able to do at school. And I was actually encouraged to do a proper degree. So I did psychology as a degree, having not studied it at school. But because I was quite academic, I was able to get in and do that. But it was just. I remember sitting in that lecture theatre with like 200 other students, you know, doing psychology, and just. yeah, I was like, what am I doing here? Where's this taking me? And then, recognizing that was all necessary for me and my journey, but really questioning the whole education system and what the point of it is. And I think so much of like the grading and exams is more, it's all like league tables, and it's not really, it doesn't feel very child-led.
No.
I felt very much like just like a product,
I was speaking to a friend who's a head teacher at a primary school, and I said, oh, how are you? She said, I spent the weekend sobbing. I was like, what's the matter? She said, I've had to spend the whole weekend grading the children, like, what did she call it? Not grading as in giving them grades. Oh no, she said, I spent the whole weekend fitting the children into a spreadsheet. She said, I have to do a spreadsheet for each child. And then she told me another time that she said something like, we have to level the children. It's the process we do is levelling, like how you level a road to make it flat before you put the tarmac on it. She's like, we have to level, they're trying to level the children out within their sort of abilities so that they all can like learn at the same time. And I get that. I'd rather that than the ones that are struggling to be left behind and all the focus just going on the clever ones. Levelling, I guess, is definitely preferable to that. But yes, there's something strange about the education system and how now it is tied into the money. And I also know that there's practicalities that mean that has to happen. But it is strange, and I think so many people know that, but I think there's just a lot of acceptance, or a lot of parents not really knowing. It's people as well.
What else to do.
It's really, really hard. I mean, I was so lucky that I even knew it was a possibility even before I had children.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, quite a few people I know come to home ed because their children has tried at school for quite a while, and it's just in the end they've had to, for no other reason than just to save their children's sanity and their own sanity, had to pull the child from school. And then they see the results of doing that, and then they are total converts. I mean, some of them didn't even want to take their children out of school, but they had to because the child was so miserable and unhealthy because of school. But then when they see what happens to their child, and they meet the other home educated children and see that community, then they, like I say, they're completely converted and think it's the most wonderful thing they've ever done. But it is really hard for people to believe that they can do that. We're massively programmed that we would only be able to do that if we were professional in that field. And I do see my friends who are actually trained teachers have an advantage over me in some ways in terms of home education. But in other ways, really, I think the most important thing is your connection with your child and what you want to allow for them. So I have actually consciously chosen that possibly I'm limiting some of my children's academic education, but because I also value the other types of intelligence, like the emotional intelligence and the kinesthetic intelligence and the navigational intelligence, because I can see those intelligences also functioning well in my children, and I can see that academically they can get what they need to get in terms of some GCSEs if that's what they choose to do. Then I'm always like balancing the whole thing out, rather than just thinking, oh my god, they just need these qualifications to get a job. Because I really absolutely know that's not true. Because I have loads of friends who didn't get loads of qualifications, or who got qualifications and ended up doing something completely different. Life is always unfolding, and there's lots of different paths, isn't there? There isn't just this one funnel.
Yeah, I think certainly in recent years, it feels like all the systems around us are kind of crumbling before our eyes. So I think it's so hard to predict what the future might look like for our children, and like jobs wise and just everything wise. It's such a strange time
It is.
There's so much change happening, and I suppose that's the thing with education. Like it has to be one step ahead of the game. It has to kind of be very much about what the world's going to be like in like 20, 30 years, rather than like
what it
carrying
was like.
on.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I think about what we were learning at school and just how irrelevant, so much information, so much time spent learning
all that time.
things which had no relevance to anything really. And I think history kind of comes to mind as a subject which I see its importance, but I think children are taught such a narrow, we just did World War II to death, and there was obviously so much more history, and if we want to find that, we can read a book and find out about that. We don't need to know the ins and outs of Nazi Germany, whatever, and it's I mean it feels very outdated, but I appreciate it's not an easy thing to. I mean, how old am I now? I'm 30, nearly 36. So, and I did work in a secondary school in London not so long ago. So I kind of know where it's at, but that was only, schools are changing all the time.
Yeah.
But it's no easy thing. But I think for me, it's like how do we best prepare our children for the future?
Yes.
I don't believe that schools do best prepare our children for the future. So I think that's my main drive with all of this, is like, as a parent, being responsible for my children, it's like I want to best prepare them for the future, and I don't believe that schools are going to do that, so it's my responsibility to look for other options.
Yes, and I think genuinely, for some people, obviously school will be the best way to prepare their children for the future.
Yeah.
But if you have like you and I, obviously, and other people we know have a feeling otherwise, and that I think as well that for me, there's a sort of the essence of it is that I have, for whatever reason, I don't know why I've got this belief or awareness, but I feel my children know on some level what they want to do with their lives. I don't mean they know it consciously or they know exactly how their path's going to look. I don't necessarily mean anything like that, but I think there'll be something within them that is guiding them in life or showing them what they want to do. And the best thing I can do is, from the outside looking in, watch them, create space for them, allow them to be who they are as much as possible, which obviously also includes being responsible, for socially responsible, and being kind to people. It's not just about like, oh my God, you're my child, I'm going to let you do whatever you want. It's not that, like that quote, with freedom comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying my children could do whatever they want when they want, with no boundaries, no, not at all. But I feel they have an inherent wisdom or knowledge that needs to be uncovered or realised or understood or whatever you want to call it, and that will come. I mean, I've known people that knew at age 9 they wanted to be a midwife. She just knew it. She knew without a doubt that that's what her path was. And even when she was a teenager and was applying to, her mum and dad wanted her to be a doctor, they thought she was applying to be a doctor. She was secretly applying to be a midwife and went to midwifery college. There are some people who just know what they want to do and they know that that's what they're going to do. Other people, it takes time to unfold, doesn't it? And like some people don't even know until they're in their 50s. And some people don't need to do just one thing. You can do lots of different things. You don't have to be just one thing in your whole life.
Yeah.
So for me, that what you're talking about, that helping them prepare best for their future, well, to me, the best way to do that is observe your children.
Yeah.
They will tell you, because they will say, Mum or Dad or Granny or whatever, I want to go I want to make a sword, or I want to go and see a baby lamb and feed it, or from a young age they'll tell us. Our children are always telling us about what they want, don't they? We just have to keep listening, and then obviously don't just go, oh yes darling, you can have whatever you want. I don't mean it like that. But just watching, and also I sometimes think, as well as the parent, we have a responsibility to challenge them. It's not just about letting them have the total lead. I know some people home educate like that, autonomous education would let the child totally decide all the time. I made a decision that I couldn't do that. I felt like I just couldn't. It didn't feel quite right for me, so I will sometimes challenge my children a bit. Like, for example, my 14-year-old, my eldest son when he was 14, didn't want to go and do a day a week at the local agricultural college studying photography. But I felt it was really important for him to do something and step out into the world and do something out of his comfort zone. And then he did it, and it was never making him miserable, not too miserable anyway, he was never like feeling devastated by it, and he got through it, and he actually enjoyed it, and then when he went to college again, it was easier for him because he'd already done it before. So I think it's that balance again of a bit of challenging, but mostly listening to.
It's a fine game. You don't want to
it's an ongoing fluid response that never stays in one position for too long. In my experience.
Because human beings, we need a bit of discomfort and pressure sometimes to really, grow.
To know what we're capable of. And it's a mirror, isn't it? I mean, I could say, my children know what they want to be, it's all inside them, but they also need the outside world to show them all these different opportunities of things they could do. It's not just necessarily...
But I think it's about respecting children, like empowering children, because they are so intelligent and they might not be able to verbally express necessarily, but they're so aware, so intelligent, they understand so much, and I think it is observing, isn't it, and seeing, how they interact with the world, what they're interested in. Do they like kind of making things, or are they sort of drawn to nature? Are they like really into creating images, or and then it's just kind of nurturing. But then I suppose you don't want to kind of funnel them too much. So it's like, my child
you don't want to label them.
They're
paint.
It's like we want to do other. So it's this kind of fine, but it's I think nurturing those things that they have a natural gravitation towards and get enjoyment from, and because that will be the thing that they do well in, get good at, but then there could be other things that they're also interested in. Like I was always really into drawing. I loved art at school, and there's a part of me that wishes I'd sort of pursued that more. Done an art foundation and seen where that took me. I think it's having that self-belief, which is so important. I think that's the key, really, is that self-belief, and that's the thing that's really going to aid them in future, and sort of the resilience as well. Like, so when I was at university, when things kind of started unravelling for me, and I did sort of suffer a bit with depression throughout my 20s, because it was just this whole disillusionment with the world and the system that I was expected to be a part of, even though everyone knew that it wasn't functioning and serving people and planet, and I see it was a necessary process for me to kind of make my own sense of the world, but I wouldn't want my children to necessarily have to go through that. I'd want them to have a bit more sort of groundedness in there, and not this which I think what can happen at school is this sort of people pleasing, needing to achieve, like you're not good unless you're doing well at school, or
where your identity and your value as a person comes from outer recognition and approval, either in terms of grades or praise. And don't get me wrong, it's nice, isn't it? If you get a genuine like internal response because you know you've worked really hard and you've got the grade that you wanted because you wanted to do it, that's very different from a child working really hard and getting the grades because they've been told they have to for years and years and years. So like when my son got his GCSE grade 6 in his English language from doing a year's evening class, that was very different for him. I am guessing it meant more, I think, than possibly somebody who'd just done it because they had to, because he'd chosen to do that and he made it all happen, if you like. I think it's like that with anything in life. If you make anything, whether that's a grade in an exam or a shed or a good relationship, if you've done it because you wanted to do it and you then put up with the difficulties in order to make that be a real thing in the world, the rewards from that are going to be, they're just going to ripple out into your life forever. Whereas if you've just done something because you were supposed to and you had to, and then it didn't really mean much to you and you just kind of overrode how you felt inside in order to make everybody else around you happy, that's a very different experience, I think. And I'm not saying it's always like that for my children, Jesus, you know, I'm not like the most, there's lots of like difficult times and ups and downs and stuff, of course, but I'm hoping that what they experience they're having of their childhood is that they've got some connection internally with themselves and they get to choose what they do with that and then make that something in the world of benefit to them and other people.
Yeah, I think because at the point we're at on planet Earth with everything that's happening, there does feel like there's a real opportunity for, you know, a lot of new ways of doing things. And I suppose for our children, they'll be kind of on the forefront of that potentially. You know, it's difficult to say exactly how it's all going to.
It is. It's really difficult.
But yeah, I think, you know, it's exciting. It is, I think you know, for me, you know, community is the key in how parents come together and you know, have these sorts of conversations and share that responsibility of, because you know, I know that I don't have all the qualities to pass on to my children, but if there's multiple adults around who can all, you're more likely to kind of cover all the bases then.
Absolutely. I would have been absolutely screwed without the homemade community. It has been the absolute saviour of this process, is that we've been in it together. And we've, you know, I personally have a massive love and fascination of tribal living, so it's been my tribe, and it doesn't even have to be that, you know, that's me personally, you don't have to be that invested in it, you can still dip in and out of a homemade community without them being like your best mates. But it has been a massive reason why it's worked, pretty much one of the main reasons, and that I also financially could not have to work in the early years. I mean, I work now, but while they were younger, I didn't have to. Plus family support as well, you know. I mean, grandparents have a great role to play, uncles, aunties, cousins, basically anybody you can get your hands on who likes kids, you know, who you think has got something to share. I mean, I've approached the guy in Halfords who mends the bikes and asked him to come and do a bike maintenance workshop, because he was telling me his story about when he was young and lived in London. He used to pull the old bikes out of the canal that people had thrown in the canal, and then him and his mates would do them up. And as soon as I heard him and saw his face light up with how much he loved bikes, I was like, I want my children to have that man to teach them, you know, like as soon as I met the filmmaker who makes films with our local arts centre and with dementia groups, and how passionate he was, I was like, and one of my children at that point was interested in animation. I was like, oh my God, can you do some animation work with a home ed group? You know, there's just so many people that are up for like working. And then if you all club together, it doesn't have to cost that much because you're paying for the person's hourly rate.
Yes.
You can have it in your own house, you can have it in your garden, you could have it in a local park, you could hire a village hall if it's cheap enough. You know, you just it's doing all that stuff together that makes the difference.
Yeah, and I think it's empowering the parents as well, isn't it? As well
Yes.
as the children. And, it's like,
And you wouldn't believe how much the parents would be. A lot of the time with some of, well, not a lot of the time, but some of the time with the activities, the kids would all run off and play and the parents would be there making the thing.
Yeah. I think I'd be one of them. So for anyone interested then on embarking on the home ed journey, what would you say is a good starting point? So I suppose connecting with your local home education community, and I suppose just googling Facebook. I mean, I spoke to a few home ed parents and they say Facebook is quite an essential tool these days.
Unfortunately.
I have come off Facebook, but I might have to.
I've often stayed on it just for the home ed stuff. Yes, I mean there might be other ways, other platforms to use, mightn't there? But
maybe I use.
But yes, find your local groups, and Education Otherwise is obviously the national group that you can get in touch with, and they will then be able to tell you where your local group is, and so definitely trying to find the other people and some basic leap of faith, I think, for some people. Just know it, just give it a go.
Yeah.
Just give it a go and try and it's such a journey of trust, and it really is just one step at a time. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times I've thought, oh, what on earth am I doing? Am I totally wrecking my children's lives? And because I'm not even coming from that I had a terrible time at school experience. I didn't. I had quite a laugh at school. It was okay. So I could totally understand why if you've had a terrible time at school, you would be a lot more cautious about sending your child to school. But I didn't have that. So I had that added thing of, nobody could have told me that how I birthed my children, how I fed them, I was doing something wrong, or like I might be limiting them. I just knew with everybody in my body I was doing the right thing. But when it came to education, I did wobble. And that's again where the community comes in. That's where the books come in. That's where you always speak to people with older children. Ask them about it as much as you can, because obviously they've been through those early stages. Just take that leap of faith, I guess, and on some level, like ask for. It depends if you're sort of spiritual or religiously inclined, but I would often think to myself, I'd wake up in the morning, I think, I can't make today happen. It's going to be too difficult. So I'll hand it over to someone else in the universe that knows more than me and can make these things happen easier. And it would always work. There'd always be somebody would phone and say, oh, do you want to come round today? Or
I suppose as a parent, it's just we're constantly having to make decisions, aren't we? We make the best decision that we can at the time.
And if our children throw it back in our faces, then we have to take it on the chin.
I think whatever we do, there's going to be two sides. And you never know. But that's just the joy of life, isn't it? And we do the best we can. But I think if you have that, that feeling inside you that you got to trust that intuition. And like you say, you just got to trust it and see where that takes you. And that feels like a good place to maybe conclude the conversation. Unless there's anything else you feel you need to add.
No, not really. Just that sometimes when you go with the homemade group to a museum in the middle of the week and it's really quiet because everybody else is in school, or you go to the river or the lakes, or and you just think, and you're surrounded by these people and your children are happy frolicking in the sand or the river or the workshop that they're doing or the museum or whatever, you just think, oh, this is honestly, I think this is one of the world's best kept secrets. And then of course you have the days in winter where you haven't seen anybody for 5 days and you think, oh my god, I wish my children went to school. But ultimately I think it's been one of the most amazing journeys of my life and one of the most privileged, and I'm just deeply grateful that I got to spend that much time with my children before they grow up and turn into adults.
Which is an important point, I think, because
Yes.
when you work out the proportion of time that your child will spend in school, and then they they leave home and that's it. I think it's you can feel like you've missed out there. But thanking you, Kate, for meeting me today. Hope it wasn't too. I'll see what this sounds like, but hopefully you could hear what we were saying. And thank you. Look forward to reconnecting at some point in the future.
Brilliant.
And
Thanks,
enjoy
Tom.
the rest of the day. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
We say no, 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 it's time.
So that was episode 3 of the Little World Warrior podcast. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And we also have a channel on Telegram, which I'll put the link to below. And if you would like to find out more or come and have a chat with me, please get in touch. And share with anyone else you think may be interested in hearing this conversation and finding out more about home education and best preparing our young people for the future. Thank you.
We say no, 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 it's time to turn the tide. We say no, 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 it's time to turn the tide. What about